All right, so I just saw this video like an hour ago. Thought that I give my thoughts on what happened to the Jets, and the only reason why I even give a shit about the Jets a little bit is because when I was a young kid, I used to follow the Jets because that was the only team, that was the only NFL team I knew at the time. Because when I would play the game, that's the only team I could remember. But I remember like Curtis Martin, Lavernius Coles, Santana Moss, Chad Pennington, Vinny Testaverde. So, I mean, I have some history with the Jets. When they signed Rex Ryan, I just thought it was a guy who ran his mouth a lot, didn't really wow anybody at what he did, at his job. And, he just was a good coordinator. That's it. Sorry for the noise. He was just a good coordinator, and that's about it. And when he took over the Jets and, he built that team and he kind of spearheaded that, I guess, defensive mentality in New York where, they were formidable for a couple of years. And, they drafted Mark Sanchez, fifth or sixth overall or something? Fifth overall. And they drafted Mark Sanchez and, they were really good for 2 years. But the reason why it didn't last long and the reason why a lot of the success of these other teams doesn't really last long or sustain itself is because of the ability to change. The ability to bring new players in, move players out, switch things up, switch the game plan, add new plays from the previous year to the next year, being able to incorporate new plays, having a quarterback that you can rely on in key situations. I mean, there were so many things that was going against the Jets. The reason why they never made it to the Super Bowl, and the reason why they weren't able to have that success go longer than 2 years. Now, the one team that I did believe had somewhat of a recipe to last like 5 or 6 years was the Seattle Seahawks. That whole experiment only lasted 3 years. If you can say 3 years. It lasted 3 years. But when you're in a leadership position, like Pete Carroll was, and you try to befriend your team, it usually doesn't work out so well. Because they stop looking at you as an authority figure and they start looking at you as a friend. And we all know how we treat our friends versus how we treat people who we consider authority figures. It's not the same way. And that's where he messed up. He gave them a platform, and I hate the word platform so much because people just think a platform is something that you can stand on and run your fucking mouth because you have it. No. A platform, he gave them a platform to run their mouth, and they did. He gave them a platform to be themselves, and they did. And I'm not saying that letting players be themselves is a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. But when there's no filter, when there's no buffer, when there's nobody there to kind of deviate a lot of that, when if you give them an inch, they take a mile. If you can't cut them short, then they're like wild fucking animals, man. They just go off and they do whatever the fuck they want to do. And that's what happened in Seattle, and that's why it broke down so much. Because at first the players were talking about the outside. A lot of their opinions came, went against the outside until they started having open opinions about the quarterback, the coach, especially after that Super Bowl loss. They just, everything just fell apart from there. So the key to success, and people call Bill Belichick cold, or they call, they say a lot of things about him when it comes to player management. like him just trading away players who people would consider Pro Bowl players, him trading them away, like, I don't know, like they're like at the bottom of the depth chart or something like that. That's what you need, the ability to be able to take the emotion out of it, take your feelings for that player out of it. I mean, from what I saw, this dude, he loved and respected Lawyer Malloy as a player. But that didn't stop him from cutting him. That didn't stop him from trading Drew Bledsoe. That didn't stop him from trading Richard Seymour. That didn't stop him from letting go of Randy Moss. That didn't stop him from trading, what was his name? Jamie Collins. Shit, that didn't stop him from being on the fence about trading or getting rid of Tom Brady. I mean, that's the way it has to be. This is a business. I mean, it's hard. Look, when you look at somebody as your friend, it's hard to give your friend bad news because you care about them. And I think Bill Belichick had the right mindset for the job. He never looked at his players with that look of, friendship. It was always business, and that's how the NFL is. Just like every professional sporting league, it's a fucking business. And I think that's where Pete Carroll went wrong. I think Rex Ryan was too. I think he was too involved with himself. Honestly, I think he got comfortable, and complacency is a killer in the NFL. Once you start feeling comfortable in a certain mode, while everybody else is evolving and getting better, you stay in one spot. And that's why you usually see teams who are playoff teams, like the Carolina Panthers, man. They won, 15 games one year? And went to the Super Bowl. And then the next year, they were out of the playoffs. And this is why you usually, teams that lose the Super Bowl, you usually don't see them back in the Super Bowl for a while. So, that's why. But I'm just going to, watch this video, see what they say, and then,
On January 16th to 11, the New York Jets defeated the New England Patriots to advance to their second consecutive AFC Championship game, becoming the first team in NFL history to win back-to-back road playoff games in back-to-back seasons.
Now, the one thing the Jets did that I did notice against the Patriots that gave them success early was their defense. Their defense was pretty top-notch, and Darrelle Revis was, he was becoming one of those top corners in the NFL. This was like the start of Revis's prime.
This Cinderella story all started 2 years prior, on January 19th, 2009, when the Jets hired first-time head coach Rex Ryan. 3 months later, Rex got his signal caller when the Jets traded up in the 2009 draft and selected USC's Mark Sanchez with the 5th overall pick. With the Jets 7-7 in his first season, Rex proclaimed they were eliminated from playoff contention. 2 weeks later, I imagine much to Rex's surprise, the Jets clinched a wildcard spot with a win over the Bengals, a Bengals team they then defeated again in the wildcard to advance to the divisional round. Early in the fourth quarter against the Chargers, Mark Sanchez hit tight end Dustin Keller to take the lead. End zone! Caught! Touchdown! The Jets sealed their win with a 53-yard touchdown run by Sean Green, the backup running back behind aging workhorse Thomas Jones. There goes Sean Green! Touchdown! Then, despite an early lead in the AFC Championship game, thanks to an 80-yard touchdown pass to Braylon Edwards, New York fell to the Colts. But they'd be back. In the offseason, the Jets were the subject of HBO's Hard Knocks, where the world was truly introduced to the charismatic, bombastic Rex Ryan. He even took the time to write soon-to-be champs on the training camp bus, a prediction he stuck to for the season. Adding fuel to the hype fire, the Jets signed Hall of Fame running back LaDainian Tomlinson, replacing Thomas Jones, who signed with the Chiefs in free agency. Their ground and pound offense, paired with one of the best defenses in the league, led by the best corner in the league, Darrelle Revis, propelled the Jets to an 11-5 record in 2010. A game-winning field goal by Nick Folk as time expired in the wild card sent the Jets to Foxborough to face the Patriots in the divisional round. A touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone to Santonio Holmes and a 16-yard touchdown run by Sean Green helped the Jets secure a 28-21 win and a date with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC Championship game. This team surprised everyone the last couple years, and they were hell-bent on making their first Super Bowl appearance since 1969. They didn't. The AFC Championship was immediately terrible for New York. Rex Ryan deferred after winning the coin toss and handed the ball to Ben Roethlisberger, who led Pittsburgh down the field on a 9-minute drive that ended with a 7-0 lead for the Steelers. This Mark Sanchez sack fumble gave Pittsburgh a 24-0 lead in the waning minutes of the first half, all but drowning the hopes and dreams of a fan base married to the physical embodiment of disappointment. The Jets did their best to make it a game. They scored 19 unanswered points and held the Steelers scoreless in the second half, but the hole was too big to climb out of. Rex Ryan's crew was headed home without a ticket to the big game. In the offseason, Braylon Edwards, the team leader in receiving yards and touchdowns, left in free agency. To shore up their passing attack, New York signed Plaxico Burress, who was making his NFL comeback following a self-shooting incident at a nightclub in 2008. Burress proved to be a very solid addition to the team and contributed immediately, scoring in the team's first game of the season en route to a win over the Cowboys. But even though most starters returned in 2011, this was not the same team. With LaDainian Tomlinson in the twilight of his career, Sean Green was handed starting running back duties. He played well, but in no way did he make up for Tomlinson's now limited usage. With a two-headed running back attack, now a 1.5-headed ground game, the Jets had to place more on the shoulders of their third-year quarterback. They shouldn't have. Sitting at 8-5 with control over their own playoff destiny, the Jets entered a Week 15 matchup against the Eagles. The first touchdown of the game came off a Santonio Holmes fumble, returned 47 yards, and it really set the tone. Sanchez, taking Holmes' lead, threw 2 picks and lost a fumble on the way to a demoralizing 45-19 loss in a game that really mattered. The following week, Sanchez had a bit of deja vu, and once again threw 2 interceptions and lost a fumble, this time against a Giants team also playing for their playoff hopes. Entering Week 17, the Jets needed a lot of things to happen in order to make it back to the playoffs, but perhaps the most difficult of them all was winning a football game. Frustrations hit a boiling point, and in the final minutes of the game, team leader and top wideout Santonio Holmes mentally quit on the team. He began arguing with teammates in the huddle before ultimately being pulled by an assistant coach. Rex claimed that Santonio took himself out of the game, but that's only because he was unaware of what was actually going on. The Jets finished the season 8-8 and missed the playoffs. Then they did the only reasonable thing they could. They traded for Tim Tebow. The Jets were already a bit of a circus, but when they brought the
When they traded for Tim Tebow, in no way, shape, or form did they have any plans of starting Tim Tebow at quarterback. Tim Tebow was coming off of one of the most confusing years by a starting quarterback that I think anybody has ever seen. Because although Tim Tebow can't throw, and I'm a huge Tebow supporter, because I think if a guy starts for a team who's like 1-5, he manages to not 1-5. I forgot what the record was, but they won 1 game, they lost a few games, and he managed to win 8 games for them, get them to the playoffs, and then beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on a wild card. Whether the dude can throw or not, I think he's starting quarterback material. And Tebow was only in the league for what, 2 years? 3 years? 2 years. I think 2 years or 3 years before he was just out of the league altogether. I mean, and if he's committed to playing football and the team is committed to changing the way he throws, it's going to take longer than a year or 2 years for that to just happen. It's going to take longer. Tebow had all of the required. He was a far better option than Mark Sanchez, and I think anybody with common sense could see that. Now, the reason why the Jets traded for Tim Tebow, and this is just my thinking, because I don't think they ever took starting him seriously. They brought him there to bring attention to the team. I honestly believe that, because when Tebow got there, the Jets became a fucking circus. I mean, just cameras everywhere. And to me, it looked like Rex Ryan loved that shit. Like, he just loved it. And it could, and bringing Tim Tebow on, you probably could have put people in the seats. That probably would have generated a lot more money. They had no intention of starting Tim Tebow seriously. And that's when people started looking at Tim Tebow like he was a joke because of the whole Jet situation.
Be in as competition for Sanchez, they turned their little circus into the Cirque du Soleil of the football media world. But instead of awe-inspiring acrobatics, they just played football poorly. The season was engulfed in quarterback controversy talk and the looming threat of Tebow.
Because I'm pretty sure people wanted Tebow to get started over Mark Sanchez at some point during the season, and he just kept going. This is what made me believe, like, they didn't bring this dude in here to play. They brought him in there for the attention. That's all they did. They brought him in there to put fans in the seats and put cameras on their team. That's all they did. Because they never took starting him seriously. Because I probably would have started him right off the bat. Honestly. Mark Sanchez, I don't know. Mark Sanchez is like a poor man's Eli Manning. And I'm not saying Eli Manning at any point in his career couldn't play football. I'm just saying Eli Manning needed everything to go right for his team for him to be able to win. And I'm pretty sure people are starting to see that. And I've been saying this for a very long time. And it's not because I don't like the Giants. It's not because I hate the Giants. It's not because of anything like that. Eli is just not a very good quarterback. I mean, if Eli doesn't have a defense, he can't win. Because then you would have to rely on him too much. Like when the Saints defense was so fucking terrible. I mean, they were historically bad. Drew Brees was still able to make that team watchable. See, that's the difference between a great quarterback and a bad quarterback. Or a great quarterback and an average quarterback. Even though the Saints had a historically bad defense, Drew Brees still made that team a contender in some way. Tom Brady, when he had year after year, their defense was statistically bad year after year for like a 3 or 4 year stretch. They were still making it deep into the playoffs and or to the Super Bowl. I mean, but you don't see that from Eli. Without Tom Coughlin and without a solid defense, that team is picking in the lottery every fucking year. And you can just look at Eli's numbers. When it's put all on him, he struggles. All right. So I would compare Mark Sanchez to what's his name? Eli. And the only difference is the reason I think Mark Sanchez wasn't able to get to the Super Bowl after those 2 trips to the AFC Championship game was because of Rex Ryan. I mean, Rex Ryan, although he was a driving force for them being better than what they were, he was ultimately their biggest downfall at the end. I'm talking about at the end of the season. For those 2 years they went to those to the advance to the championship games, he was ultimately their downfall, man. I don't know. The Jets was an enigma. I don't know what the hell happened to spark this winning that they started doing, and then it just went away so quickly. And it was almost like nobody remembers those 2 years. It was like that shit never happened. It was like a small blip in time that people forget about.
Sanchez's confidence as fans chanted for Tebow anytime Sanchez made a mistake, which was often. To make matters worse, Rivas, the crown jewel of the defense, entered.
This was the start of mercenary Rivas, where he just went from team to team on one-year deals, and he played relatively well for the most part, man.
The 2012 season openly unhappy with his contract. This led to a lot of uneasy feelings amongst fans who worshipped the island he put his opponents on. Then, in week 3, he tore his ACL. He was traded to Tampa Bay in the offseason. But really, the 2012 Jets season can be summed up in one play. In week 12, on Thanksgiving in prime time, the Jets faced off against the rival Patriots. With 9 minutes remaining in the first half, down 14-0, Mark Sanchez set a new low for the entire franchise.
No, that play should be, there should be an image of the butt fumble in the Hall of Fame, man, because that will forever be the most hilarious, unpredictable, and just one of those plays you'll probably never see again. I mean, that is single-handedly the one play you will most likely never, ever. That was the first time you saw it, and it will be the last time you ever see it. That needs to be in the Hall of Fame. That was the most legendary play I've ever seen in my life. Like, and it just summed up the Jets, and just without saying anything, that just pretty much summed up the Jets in its entirety. Since then,
I have never seen this before in my life.
The butt fumble, as it would come to be known, replaced back-to-back AFC Championship appearances as the defining moment of the Rex Ryan, Mark Sanchez era.
Like, Mark Sanchez, like when I first saw this and I looked at his face, he looked scared as shit. And then when he hit his ass, it's like the most uncomfortable moment. And Mark Sanchez never, I guess, lived that down. I mean, to this day, he'll always be associated with that play. And it's a shame, man, because this dude did help this team get to 2 championship games. But his career was short-lived, you know? I don't think he was worthy of a 5th overall pick based on the numbers. I don't think he was worthy of them. And this is my thing about Daniel Jones. Like, we can't get into judging this kid before this kid has a chance to prove himself. I mean, because he could be just another butt fumble guy, but we don't know that. I mean, and it's too soon to make that assumption. Well, I'm done with this. I mean, I kind of figured I was going to stop at the butt fumble, man, because, that was just probably the most key. That was the most notable moment of the run of the Jets in the late 2000s, early 2010s. But, yeah, so I'm done. All right.